Hello and welcome to another devotional on spiritual warfare. Today's is going to be talking about the shield of faith, and we may spend more than one day on that, just as I'm going to be spending more than one day preaching on the shield of faith. One of the things that I just wanted to let you know as we think about spiritual warfare is that faith is the victory, and we're going to be talking about that. And I'm going to read the lyrics to that hymn to you. Faith is the way that we obtain the victory that is available to us. For by grace you have been saved through faith, not of works, lest anyone should boast. So I'm going to read Ephesians 6:10-20 for you one more time. This time I'm reading it from the NIV. And as I read it, I just want you to really think about what God has done for us, the armor that He has available to us. And then I want you to think about the fact that all of this armor has to be appropriated by faith. We have to believe. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in His mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand. Stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God, and pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and to always keep on praying for all the Lord's people. Pray also for me that whenever I speak, words may be given me, so that I will fearlessly make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains. Pray that I may declare it fearlessly, as I should. So that's Paul's admonition and his request. And once again, I'm just going to remind you, this is God's armor. He provides it, and it's all about Him and through Him. And then, we stand in the power of the Lord. Be strong in the Lord and in His mighty power. But all of this is appropriated by faith. As I said earlier, when we think about our salvation, when we think about grace, when we think about God, all of this is by faith. I'm not saying there's no reasonable evidence that we can turn to. There's reasonable evidence for God, but you can't prove He exists. I remember taking a class at the University of Arizona as I was working on my Bachelor of Arts in Religious Studies. And I had this class on the philosophy of religion. And as a young person growing up in church and attending youth group, I had been taught that there were proofs for the existence of God. And I believed those. And I learned them. I studied them, and I thought they were there. Well, in this philosophy of religion class, the professor dismantled each one of these proofs before my very eyes. He showed me the fallacies involved in them from a philosophical perspective. And that was really tough for me at that time. And it was a real blow to my faith. But finally, there was a young gal in the class with me who said, "Well, Kurt, you're not supposed to be able to prove that God exists." And I was like, "What?" And she reminded me of Hebrews 11:6. Hebrews 11:6 says, "And without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to Him must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who earnestly seek Him." So while I believe that there are evidences for God, and for his creative power in our world, I don't any longer think that you can prove he exists, because if you could prove he exists, you wouldn't need faith. It would be a matter of reason. And so, one of the things that we need to understand is when it comes to our relationship with God, at the bedrock, at the bottom, it's held up by faith. We use our minds, we use our reason in order to um, understand and know the truths and to discern the evidences and things of that nature for God, but we can't ultimately prove his existence, and that's as God planned it, because without faith, it's impossible to please God. We have to believe that he exists and that he will reward us if we earnestly seek him. So faith is absolutely essential, and as the hymn says, faith is the victory. These words were written a long time ago, but they're still really powerful. Encamped along the hills of light, ye Christian soldiers rise, and press the battle ere the night shall veil the glowing skies. Against the foe and vales below, let all our strength be hurled. Faith is the victory we know that overcomes the world. His banner over us is love, our sword the word of God. We tread the road the saints above with shouts of triumph trod. By faith they like a whirlwind's breath swept on o'er every field. The faith by which they conquered death is still our shining shield. On every hand the foe we find, drawn up in dread array. Let tents of ease be left behind, and onward to the fray. Salvation's helmet on each head, with truth all girt about. The earth shall tremble neath our tread, and echo with our shout. To him that overcomes the foe, white raiment shall be given. Before the angels he shall know his name confessed in heaven. Then onward from the hills of light, our hearts with love aflame, will vanquish all the hosts of night in Jesus' conquering name. You know, right now, we are in a world that is torn and it's confused. On every hand, the foe we find, drawn up in dread array. And so we need to leave our tents of ease and move into the battle with faith. Keep faith in God. He's there, he's present, he loves you, and he will sustain you. Well, that's enough for today, but I just want you to know that faith is an essential weapon in our arsenal. It's an essential part of the armor of God. We have to cling to our faith at all costs. May God bless you today and give you the faith you need to do what he's asked you to do.